this height of this podium. So I may hide behind the laptop every now and then so you can hear me. But first of all, I wanted to thank you all for being here and for the organizers, especially Dr. Noshad and Dr. Cherian, and also all the students who are helping us, and they magically appear by our side whenever we need something, like magical fairies. Thank you so much for being such wonderful hosts. And just come a bit closer. I can actually see. Yes. Thank you. Well, it's quite ironic. This is a design problem, and I am a designer. As Madaya kindly introduced me, I'm a designer and educator. I am from Schumacher College. I have played a few roles there as a senior lecturer, program lead, head of research, and learning leadership. I'm also very privileged to work closely with Satish Kumar and Madaya as a director of Satish Kumar Foundation. And today I'm going to talk about Schumacher College a little bit. You have heard eloquently about it from Satish. I add a few notes. I want to talk about education, especially at this age. We talked about AI a few times, and I will also talk about AI as well as a provocation. I also want to talk about the system of education, which is exactly the opposite end to AI. And then in the third part of my presentation, I will talk about Schumacher College and how these are all related to that. I am not an AI scholar, but I do use AI. And especially in my role as a director of a startup, I need to actually play a few roles in a day. Sometimes I need to be an IT expert, just learning, teaching myself how to move one website domain to another one. And then an hour later, I need to learn how to develop an employee contract. So AI is a very useful tool. Show of hands, student, who in this room doesn't use AI? Why not? It's a great tool. It really helps with administrative efficiency. It personalized learning experiences. It gives wider access to expertise. Some would say that it democratizes knowledge. It potentially enhances creativity, debatable. It gives stronger decision-making support through data analysis. It's definitely a new tool for scientific discovery and problem solving. Gives opportunity to reduce repetition or prevent risky situations. It also creates a more equitable space for neurodiverse individuals in education, work and life. I was listening to this interview with a man in his 50s, and he was very emotional when he was talking about AI. He was saying that he had a very severe ADHD and dyslexia, and he was very emotional. He was saying that this is the first time in my life that I feel I can communicate coherently. And so there is this argument about usefulness of AI. And so the question is, does AI pave the way towards a safer, more democratic, and more equal world? And then there is another side of the argument. We know that AI compromises critical thinking and creativity. It undermines the value of human memory, intellect, and our own creativity. It transferred trust from human to algorithm. This is horrible. We place in trust, which is the foundation of human societies, on machine. There is always a question of concentration of power in hands of those who own or shape the algorithm. It creates the problem of inequality between those who have access to AI and those who don't. There is obviously an environmental cost of energy-intensive AI system, which we don't talk much about. It displaces and removes jobs and livelihood, especially from vulnerable people and vulnerable parts of the society. And also, it gives rise to the growing disconnection between lived experience and the material world. Let's not forget, AI is not just a tool. AI is an agent, and Yuval Harari keeps reminding us. We have created an agent more clever than us. And so the pressing question is, will AI reduce populations to puppets of powerful corporates and governments, or even worse, the machine itself? Also, please don't worry about the text on the screen. The text is really just to lead you to the pictures. And the pictures are providing glimpses into type of learning at Schumacher College. As an educator, I think the biggest risk of AI is removing the process, erasing the space in between intention and results. You just enter your intention, and what you cultivate is a result, and nothing else in between. What happens in between is magic. And it might be okay if you're making legal argument, if you're not a legal expert and you want to make a court case, don't want to pay lawyers, great. You can develop a legal argument for free, and who cares about the process? But in education, that lack of process is a disaster, because learning happens in this process, in this space in between. And what happens in between is the exploration and questioning, asking why and how, challenging assumptions, and considering multiple perspectives. It's the space where struggles happen, frictions happen, the sitting with discomfort of uncertainty happens, and then the gradual refining solution and ideas. This is the space where seemingly irrelevant ideas come together and create a whole new field of discovery. And it's the space where metacognition happens, thinking about how we think and evaluating the soundness of our reasoning. And finally, this is the embodiment stage, grounding learning in hands-on practice, in dialogue and lived experience, not just abstract reasoning. The fact of our lives is uncertainty, and we crave certainty. The fact of our life is change, movement, and we long for arriving. It's from Carla Middleman. So what to do? We don't know. But there are a few facts. We cannot exclude artificial intelligence from education. We cannot ban it. It's impossible. We cannot ignore AI and just carry on with the old system. We know that higher education is facing a serious crisis, especially in the UK. I don't know how it is here, but in the UK, younger people are turning their back to higher education. They simply don't see how this education could prepare them to the complexity of the world they are living in. Education is not compatible with the complexity of the world. And we all heard about the state of the world. We have already crossed 7 out of 9 planetary boundaries and everything else that you know already. So the time to act is now, and it needs to start from education. I have been looking at sources for inspiration, and I forgot to say that I actually have a craft background. I was a silversmith, and I did a large part of my PhD on craftsmanship. And craftsmanship, the story of craftsman, the journey of craftsman, is exactly the opposite of AI. It is a process-centered learning education and provides a rich source of inspiration. Inspiration. I'm not suggesting to go back to it. I'm suggesting to get inspired by it. I have looked at different craftsmanship traditions in different parts of the world, from Iran, which is my own birth country, to the UK, which is my current home, also Germany and Far East China. And the story of craftsmanship is more or less similar in all those countries. It always have these 3 stages of apprenticeship, journeyman, and mastery. This is a type of education that cultivates wisdom, not just knowledge. It's a kind of knowledge about having new eyes rather than looking for a new territory. So I'll talk briefly about each of these stages. Apprenticeship, the dictionary definition, is the transfer of knowledge from a skilled practitioner to a learner. But in crafts traditions, the apprentice entered into a living relationship with the master, with the craft, and with a particular way of life. It's the kind of knowledge that is absorbed through observation, imitation, and participation in the whole dynamic, not just learning craft. It's not about receiving instruction. There was always a strong leadership presence with the master in this type of relationship. There's a full body presence, full mind and body presence in the environment. It cultivated patience, respect and humility. Again, not just about knowledge or skill, it's about the manner and behavior as much as the skills. And in all those traditions, apprenticeship was integrated with morality, spirituality, and the presence of divine. I thought this quote from Nasseri, who was my teacher, captured beautifully. Apprenticeship is not merely the matter of learning how to carve a stick out of the wood, but is the matter of learning to see the carving as a pathway to conjoin the wood and let the self and the wood flow into each other's being. It means that as an apprentice, your hands are not solely forming the material, but also forming your mind. This process of forming and being formed continues to the extent that your transformed mind and wisdom, rather than drives of the society, becomes your guide in your life. The workshop, the master's workshop, provides a very safe and secure home for the apprentice. But the apprentice needs to live and abide rules of the workshop, or rules of the master. So the apprentice may have developed this longing for freedom. After 7 years, at least 7 years, when the master feels that the apprentice is standing on the threshold of generously giving and openly receiving, they'll send them off into a journey, and then the journey person stage begins. This is a stage of humility and authority. self-reliance, trustworthiness, and leadership. This is the stage when the apprentice, now a journey person, moves from one craft guild to another, learn from them, and provides the skills and services to them. So through this process, they learn to dialogue with others. If the apprenticeship was more about learning to dialogue with the material, this stage is about dialoguing with people as an art rather than a battle to win. By being exposed to different ideas, different environment, they practice resilience, critical thinking, and discernment. But there's also sorrow in the story of journeyman. While feeling free, they are also homeless. They experience a sense of loss, so grief and loss is part of this process as well. They're still longing for that security and home, and that longing keeps them going. After at least 2 years of being a journeyman, in one of the guilds that stopped by, the master, when they recognize that the journeyman is ready to become a master, they sign a certificate. But it's only then that the master realizes, the new master realizes, this is a never-ending story. This mastery is not a destination, it's a lifelong journey that is not defined by skills, belonging, or recognition. It arises from a deep understanding that knowledge is never fixed and that we are all part of an ever-changing whole which can never be truly known. No knowledge can be truly mastered. The master simultaneously resides in the state of authentic self and being one with the whole. From this place, he or she is ready for the responsibility of carrying the light and guiding others as they seek their own path of becoming. I added a Rumi quote here. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I'm changing myself, which is related to this one. The story of craftsman, the journey of craftsman, fits well with the spiral of growth. This circle is inspired by Robert Higgins, evolutionary psychologist, and also applies to this story of any type of learning, any type of development, which basically says we are all embedded in different cultures, more than one cultures. When we move to a new culture, we feel unsettled because our inner world and the world that we are entering into are not aligned. In longing equilibrium, there are two ways. One is changing the internal world, and one is changing the external world. I would say the modern education is too quick to change the external world and ignore the internal world. Whereas the role of the craftsman is giving time to get to know the external world and what needs to change internally to align with it. It's not about not making any change to the external world. Of course, there are craftsmen that have the skills, but offering the skills only as a service for what is missing, rather than imposing something new. So that brings me to the third part of this presentation, which is Schumacher College. Schumacher College was founded in 1991 by Seethi. You see hands-on Seethi there at the top left. It was meant to be the new vision for Dartington, founded on ecological and spiritual values. It was the meeting point of East and the West, bringing the idea of ashram from the East and university from the West together. Since the beginning, Schumacher College hosts the leading edge teachers and thinkers to the college. People like Vandana Shiva, beloved Jane Goodall, Joanna Macy, who also recently passed, James Lovelock, Chilean economist, Manfred Maxniff, Kate Raworth, heard about Donald Economics, and many others. Schumacher provided that space for people whose idea were ahead of the time, and continue to do that. The 4 pillars of learning at Schumacher's were these for ecology, which is not just about studying natural being in their environment, but a deep appreciation that the planet is a living being, living and conscious being, and our consciousness is part of the consciousness of that whole. So ecology at Schumacher College is inherently spiritual. Community, there's a strong sense of community, and community is held together by joining the community service. So no matter that you are a staff, volunteer or a student, everyone joins cooking and cleaning and working on the land. Our pedagogy is, as Satish described, the pedagogy of head and heart, learning with not just the cognitive intellect, but also emotional intellect, and also hands as well. And the other pillar is connection to the place, connection to the land, care for the place. Not necessarily the place, which was Schumacher College, but any place that we are. Beyond knowledge, there is so much that is happening at Schumacher. As our great teacher Ian McGilchrist says, education should draw something out of the student rather than simply push information in. And this is what Schumacher provides for a student. This is the space for unmask and heal the individual. Create a safe space to rediscover and embody the authentic self. Some people say Schumacher is a bubble. Well, yes, it is a bubble, but not in that sense. Schumacher provides this invisible wall where student and participant could be their real self, their authentic self, without fear of being judged. It enables people to reclaim their imagination and uniqueness, bring balance back to the quality of attention, or balancing the left or right hemisphere. It's practicing care and humility by serving others in the community and the place itself. As I said, Schumacher was established in 1991. Most of it short courses from a week to 5 weeks. Before 2000, the first postgraduate program, Holistic Science, was launched. Holistic Science is the study of natural being in connection with the rest of being, rather than as isolated parts. In 2011, the second postgraduate program, Economics for Transition, which then later changed name to Regenerative Economics, was launched. Is the ways in which economics could be regenerating nature rather than extracting from it. In 2014, MA Ecological Design Thinking was launched, which is aligning social system with human-made system with natural system. So rather than extracting from natural system, we can work with nature while also meeting human needs. In 2021, the college expanded. We had three more postgraduate programs, including regenerative farming, also a undergraduate and PhD. Unfortunately, in 2024, college came to a sudden halt as Dartington Hall Trust, the current organization went through serious financial challenges, and they decided to close down the college. Of course, that was not the end, but the start of a new chapter for Schumacher College. A group of us, staff, and with the support of community we have from around the world, we start this new chapter for college. We first launched the Satish Kumar Foundation with Satish's support and blessing. And then we started a nomadic presence. We thought that we need to go wild a bit. We are free from higher education, and we are free from the very outdated economic system of Dartington Hall Trust. So we launched Schumacher Wild, while we were in negotiation with Dartington Hall Trust to reclaim Schumacher College name. Through Schumacher Wild, we built a local and international partnership. We introduced radically interdisciplinary programs, and in the meantime, we also reclaimed Schumacher name and asset, including our rich library. And now we are going into a new phase of hopefully securing a new home for the college. We have started a fundraising campaign to buy a new land. What we learn from the story of craftsmanship and how it is applied to Schumacher. As an institution, I would say we had 35 years of apprenticeship. We had the security of having a home. We had to abide by the rules. We learned a lot from our leading age teachers and thinkers. But for our students as well, we provide apprenticeship, which is the most foundational part of their journey. It's transformative in nature. The apprenticeship needs to be place-based. Student needs to be safe and grounded. In this phase, we emphasize on creativity, embodied memory, embodiment generally. Students, whether they are studying economics, design, or farming, they all go through this process of learning about poetry, phenomenology, storytelling, and reopening the channels of communication with more than human walls. After that stage, and this is the new part that we are adding, we'll send them off to a journey, traveling and experiencing the projects and organizations in our network, so they can experiment with different perspectives and meet other islands of coherence. This is not just for students, this is also help shaping a living network of holistic education and transformative practices around the world. And finally, when they have received that experience, we invite them to come back to the college and become fellows and support others and contribute to the learning of the college with their own experience. And this is how the college will always be relevant and connected to the rest of the world. Oops. This is a relational education that cultivates resilience, creativity, imagination, critical thinking, discernment, agency, and holistic view of life. Things that you can never learn from AI. This is just display of our whole pedagogy, which I do not expect you to read, but I just want to read core mission and core objectives. Our core mission is restoring relationship between the self, others, and nature. It's about how to resource the self, how to be human, how to live well together, and how to care for this place, home, ecosystem, Earth, Gaia. Our core objectives are life-focused thinking, life-aligned purpose, and life-enabling actions. And our core aim is life-centered learning. If you want to know more about Schumacher College, please come talk to me. I would be very delighted to go through the whole displays. And that's it from me. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mona. Our next speaker is Professor K.M. Seethi. Dr. K.M. Seethi, professor at the School of International Relations and Politics, Mahatma Gandhi University. With over 3 decades of teaching and research experience, Dr. Seethi has held several key academic positions, including Director of the School of International Relations and Politics, Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Director of Research at Mahatma Gandhi University. He currently chairs the Center of Cross-National Communications in South Asia and coordinates the KBS Menon Chair for Diplomatic Studies. An eminent scholar in international relations, South Asian studies, and political theory, Dr. Seethi has presented papers at leading global institutions including the University of Cambridge, National University of Singapore, and University of Malaya, among others. He is also the editor of the South Asian Journal of Diplomacy and general editor of the Indian Journal of Politics and International Relations, with numerous publications, research projects, and contributions to national and international forums to his credit. He's going to speak about peaceful coexistence in the age of unrest, pathways to sustainability. Professor,
thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kale. I must first thank the organizers of this conference, particularly Father King George and Professor Nausha, for inviting me to this session to speak on a topic. I assure you that I don't have any power or any uncomfortable points. So we are not burdened with the PowerPoints. I'm sure that this Schumacher College is an embodiment of peaceful coexistence. When Dr. Naushad asked me to speak on this subject, I suddenly said, it's all right. But later on I found that this is an ocean of subjects which I cannot comfortably deal with in a 30 minutes time. A few seconds ago, a few moments ago, I was just scrolling my mobile. I found a news item from BBC telling that the British Prime Minister, Stammer, has asked the British students not to join any protest today with the Palestinians or anybody in the United Kingdom. Very uncomfortable statement from the Labour Prime Minister, Stammer. I will start with that. Today is the second, I should not call it as an anniversary, but a very tragic incident which took place 2 years back in the Middle East. With the launching of attacks by Hamas, killing hundreds of people in Israel. The number could be anywhere between 1,000 or 2,000, 100,000 and 200. Taking hundreds of people as hostages. And what followed was a reign of death. It is nothing short of a genocide. You know, that gets underway. This is the second anniversary, if you put it like that. Killing more than 60,000 people, which is not a small number. If you have the history of Palestine. And also, nearly 1 lakh bombs have been dropped. on a small strip of land in the Middle East, like a place called Gaza. And in fact, I have been asking this question, primary question, whether a segment of the world population which has great credentials of peaceful coexistence until the 19th century, can't they live peacefully? This basic question anybody can ask, but the answer could be a problematic one for several reasons. A few weeks back, you may recall that nearly 4,400 scientists from 87 countries made an appeal, rather a very bold statement, asking Israel to stop this genocide without exonerating Hamas, pointing to the atrocities committed by Hamas, without making any kind of a balancing act in the very pointedly. And I do agree with that, because the whole process of genocide started with Hamas intruding into Israel and perpetrating this violence, killing ordinary people, very ordinary people. And I had a kind of feeling that for every Israeli killed in Palestine, at least hundreds of ordinary Palestinians will have to pay a price, a huge price. And that actually happens. That actually happens. And I don't consider this as just a battle between two peoples, between a state actor and a non-state actor like Hamas. I would call it as a collapse of a trust, collapse of the norms of existence. And the remainder that we have forgotten how to coexist, how to live in peace. I am very happy that out of these 4,400 scientists from 87 countries, there are more than 300 from India. It's quite a good number, but most of them are from well-known institutions like Tata Institute of Fundamental Research, Indian Institute of Technology, Indian Institute of Science. But I haven't seen any names from any universities in this country. Universities in this country have been shut down, literally I should say. Though Modi government hasn't asked the people of this country not to demonstrate or not to do this, you have an unofficial blackout, and several universities are reluctant to conduct even a seminar on this. Terribly afraid of. I should call it as a fear. And that's where what I heard from Dr. Satish Kumar's talk yesterday. Students should be taught first how to be courageous in life. The right side of the brain is dormant. It's not functioning all the time. I think for a long time, many students will be feeling that this right side of the brain is almost dead. Because we cannot be sensitive, we cannot be imaginative in any meaningful way. That's the sad story of our... No, if you have a very bad brain on the right side of your head, you may not be able to recognize the norms of coexistence, the norms of trusteeship, the norms of oneness, the norms of peace. You have only a mechanical part of your brain functioning in such a manner that you have the numbers, you have the figures and everything you calculate, and you weigh the pros and cons in a very mechanical way. And I am very unhappy that people and civil societies across this world are literally under siege. I'm not surprised rather, when Trump tells the American students not to protest, telling universities not to host any seminars, and if you do that, you will be deprived of your funding, federal funding, in any meaningful way. you have the person in the White House creating a new norm of existence. It's not a new norm of coexistence. He's creating and generating a kind of a terrain where norms of existence are dictated from a tenant in the White House. He's a crazy man. I think the American people have understood very clearly that you cannot run a country with this sort of idiosyncrasies all the time. So the basic question is, what are the reasons for this? And I would say that, Dr. Satish Kumar would agree with me that power and self-help are the two important major enemies of peace. Power and self-help. We used to teach in international relations the norms of self-help as a typical realist paradigm. You don't have any liberal content in the self-help like that. You don't have to help others in any meaningful way. It's only self-help. And this neoliberal age promotes this self-help in meaningful ways. There is no sense of any collectivity, there is no sense of any collective action, there is a total absence of the social in the scheme of things in a neoliberal age. Atomization of our life, thinking of oneself, not of others. And that strikes at the root of the norms of peaceful coexistence, I would say. And Mahatma Gandhi was the first, I should say, who boldly said that this land, Palestine, belongs to the Palestinians. And Palestinians means they are Muslims, they are Jews, and they are Christians. It's a holy land of three religions, not of the three armies. He opposed partition. India opposed partition in that manner. For the simple reason that we too had a very uncomfortable time with the partitioning of our own self, the Indian self, in 1947. We had a kind of a thinking that, the partition would ultimately resolve the Hindu-Muslim question in India with Pakistan emerging. The idea that Muhammad Ali Jinnah put across was that Hindus and Muslims cannot live together. This is a kind of an artificial construct that he put across, and the Britishers had to accept it at some point of time. The norms of peaceful coexistence was undermined with the partition of the subcontinent. And what followed was that a kind of India partition, the partition of this subcontinent resulted in the partitioning of the minds of people in such a way that the post-partition days are nothing but days of hostile coexistence with the country which thought that it would be a kind of a paradise for the Muslims of this country, an Islamic state like that. What is happening in Pakistan is known to all. It's an anarchic deep state with no norms of democracy, no norms of life. People enjoying there. And I would say that along with all these things, I'm very happy that Dr. Satish Kumar has been a very the frontline champion of nuclear disarmament all these years. This is a very crucial question. I think it was in the context of the emergence of nuclear bombs that the central norm of peaceful coexistence came under challenge. Perhaps you know that the whole process started way back in 1939. Perhaps we may be quite uncomfortable in telling this today. In 1939, when Albert Einstein, we call him the man of peace, co-authored a letter to then American President Franklin Roosevelt, You know what was that letter telling? He warned Roosevelt that Nazi Germany would build an atomic bomb soon. So the US must take the lead in preventing it. That letter gave birth to the Manhattan Project. And that Manhattan Project set the nuclear age and the nuclearization of international relations. And little did Einstein expect that it would lead to catastrophic results. But when Hiroshima and Nagasaki were destroyed, Einstein was obviously shattered. I quote him, "The unleashed power of the atom has changed everything except our ways of understanding, our ways of thinking." It tells the truth. Then he became champion of disarmament after that. Ironically, he never asked adversaries to renounce the weapons in the American arsenal. This may appear to be very strange. Why is that Einstein hasn't asked the American establishment to renounce the weapons? He didn't want to encourage the dispersion of the system in place. And you know, a similar paradoxical statement came from a well-known mathematician turned philosopher, Bertrand Russell. You all call him as a great pacifist. I'm also a fan of Russell. And in the context of the Cold War, Russell argued that the threat of use of nuclear bombs could be justified to deter the Soviet Union. And later on, he had to regret this in his autobiography that he made such a kind of remark at a critical point in time. Just before the Soviet Union exploded its nuclear device, he made this statement. As a deterrent, a person like Bertrand Russell had to make this statement. So only after Moscow built its own atomic bomb did he become a peace campaigner across this world, and he never detracted from that path. So even scientists and philosophers were at some point of time not free from the logic of power operating or existing in a different manner. You know the story of another scientist, Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the nuclear bomb. You would have seen the film. Many of you would have got excited after seeing this film. But there is another side of the story that when he saw the first bomb explode in the desert of New Mexico, the first experiment in 1945, before the Nagasaki and the Hiroshima experiment, he recited the Bhagavad Gita. Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds, and it can be interpreted, can be translated in different ways. Now I have the time, or anything like that. Oppenheimer used these particular words from Bhagavad Gita. You may wonder why is that he quoted from Bhagavad Gita. He was also learning Sanskrit in one of the universities. He had a familiarity with the Bhagavad Gita. He had read it and he knew the sentences, verses like that. I do not know whether he deliberately quoted this or it was a spontaneous expression. Oppenheimer, he recognized that humanity had unleashed a destructive power comparable to the cosmic force described in the Gita. But, you know, after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he told President Truman, "I have blood on my hands." You would have noticed this from the film. this particular moment. I have blood on my hands. You know what President said after he left from the room? He told his staff that don't let the crybaby back in here. That was the divide between power and conscience. You know, Oppenheimer had a very troubled time after that. When he opposed the detonation of hydrogen bomb, the American administration again became suspect. Then they started digging into their history, and they later on found that he had a communist background. He had a communist background. His wife had a communist background. His brother had a communist background. Naturally, he should be put on alert. In 1954, his security clearance was lifted. You know, when it was dropped, he had to wait until 2022. The film was getting prepared in the background of that. It took us such a long time to restore his position as a respectable scientist without any bad credentials. Till that time, he was listed as a suspect, a scientist being suspected because of his opposition to nuclear bombs being used against humanity and like that. You know, there are several such ironies in history. You know, Buddha was the first among the earliest teachers to articulate the idea of peaceful coexistence in a clear, universal and ethical way. And his teachings implied that all life is interconnected, a foundation for peaceful coexistence. Ironically, when India tested its first nuclear device in 1974, it was codenamed. What is that? Do you remember what was the code name for the first nuclear test? Anyone knows? Smiling Buddha. The officials declared that the Buddha has smiled. You know the reason why? Because this was done on Buddha Purnima Day, the day of the enlightened one. And how we used our sacred text to establish our power of destruction from Oppenheimer to the Indian establishment. A very, very, very peculiar thing. And then Mrs. Gandhi called it as a peaceful nuclear explosion. It was a peaceful nuclear explosion. Many saw this as a hypocrisy. No less than a person like Gunnar Mudha call it as nothing. This is nothing but a Siamese twins. If you have a nuclear technology, which means you can produce nuclear bomb also. So don't fool people around the world that you have done a peaceful explosion and like that. So, what followed was that Pakistan started its own program of nuclearization in the subcontinent. And the father of Pakistan's nuclear program, the political father, not the technical father, was Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. You know what he said about the mission of Pakistan? He said that the Christians have their bombs. He put it in a civilizational terms. The Christians have their bombs. The Jews have their bombs. Israel had already detonated in a very secretive way. Now the Hindus have their bombs. Only Muslims don't have a bomb. So we need to have an Islamic bomb. Just imagine how culture, how religion, how sacred texts have been misused and abused to justify this power of the terror of destruction. And what I am saying is that, this is the problem of the power, the problem of the self-help. You don't have any particular kind of rationality for this. Nuclear weapons, wherever it is, whether it is in the hands of Trump or it is in the hands of Modi or in the hands of British Prime Minister, they are dangerous to the world. You know how many nuclear weapons are there in the world? There are more than 12,000 nuclear weapons are in the world, and 90% of them are in the hands of the United States and Russia. 90% of them are in the hands of Russia. And they have over the last 5 to 6 years abandoned all treaties that these two powers have signed over a period of time, including Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, which means they have any time exercise their option vis-a-vis each other. This is a very dangerous world, and they still take moral classes, lessons for others. Israel, having nuclear weapons, have not signed NPT, telling that Iran is violating NPT. Iran is producing. This is a kind of a hypocrisy of the first order, bereft of any moral fiber. Anyway, we have issues after issues to be discussed from level to level. And perhaps the first two Hague conferences in the late 19th century and early 20th century laid the foundation for peaceful coexistence. But it was after the laying of the foundation that came the First World War. So conferences, treaties or international law mean anything, mean nothing, unless the power of the powerful should be confronted in a very meaningful way. The First World War. We thought that the League of Nations will save the world. We all know what happened to League of Nations. Couldn't do anything. And in between, the idea of peaceful coexistence was prominently projected by a great statesman. I would call him as a great statesman like Lenin after the Russian Revolution. He was the first to declare in the midst of the First World War that we need a peaceful coexistence. Peaceful coexistence between capitalism and socialism. If you have a kind of an enemy surrounding your country, the long-term goals of socialism cannot be achieved in any. So I would call it as a strategic position, not as a moralistic position, Lenin's position. And maybe a moralistic position you can argue sometime later when his successor, not an immediate successor, the successor in the 1950s, Nikita Khrushchev, put in this idea in the 20th Congress after the de-Stalinization process. Peaceful coexistence between socialism and capitalism. For the simple reason that both the socialists and the capitalists have nuclear bombs. So let us not use these bombs against each other. That's the only idea that he had. But around the same time, India was one of the first countries from the global south which put across this idea of peaceful coexistence, and it was put into a treaty signed with China in 1954. 1954 Panchasheel Agreement. Reverberating the Buddhist idea or something like that. I think both China and India had reasons to say this Panchasheel. Of course, Nehru had to face a lot of opposition from his own colleagues like Acharya Kapilani, who call it as Panchasheel born in sin. For the simple reason that Tibet was not properly acknowledged in the scheme of things, allowing China to continue its domination. And Tibet, since then, has been a very sore point in India-China relations. The countries which signed a peaceful coexistence, Panchasheel Agreement, in another 8 years' time had to fight a major war. In 1962, India lost the war. For the simple reason that we never thought that China would do this. That's why that Nehru said that, in a major rally in Lucknow, he said that we were really getting out of touch with the reality. They stabbed in the back. And there were several reasons. I'm not going to the details of all these things, Peaceful coexistence between the two great neighbors, the two largest populous countries in the world. We cannot ensure for the simple reason that their boundary is disputable, drawn by the Britishers. If you cannot redraw the boundary and settle the issue, you are not human beings. But what came in the way was geopolitics, power and self-help, nothing else. Nothing else and nothing less and nothing more. That is the tragedy of our relationship with our neighboring countries. We also make a point that, the test of peaceful coexistence is that whether you have the capability to maintain peaceful relations with your immediate neighbors. Isn't it? That's the logic of peaceful coexistence. Even if you are living in a particular locality, your relationship with your immediate neighbors could be the best test of your peaceful coexistence. You cannot say that we support the peaceful coexistence between United States and Soviet Union, United States and China, but you cannot do this in your own land, in your own continent. You cannot have a peaceful coexistence with the China, peaceful coexistence with the Pakistan, peaceful coexistence with the Sri Lanka, with the Maldives, with the several countries at different points of time. We talk of high spirits, neighborhood first policy and several other things. But the neighbors are not comfortable with India because of the kind of power structure that we have. It's not that India is going to, I haven't seen any instance when India has gone into another country and grabbed territory. We haven't done that. We don't have the history. The only exception would be in 1971 in East Pakistan, where we tried to help the Mukti Bahini forces, not necessarily of grabbing the territory of Bangladesh. India has a distinct history of that. In spite of all our criticisms leveled against Modi or Nehru or all other things, India hasn't done that. It's because of the logic of existence that we know within the country, as a mosaic of cultures. We all live together in such a manner that we couldn't go beyond a point in terms of partitioning of this country. The only partition in 1947 was the disaster for the country, for the peoples of these two countries. So what I'm saying is that, this ideal of peaceful coexistence has become a mere talking point, a mere what we call as a slogan, or I should call it as a footnote in the history of international law over a period of time. And with the Trump in power, the logic of existence is dictated by his unilateralism, abandoning all kinds of internationalism, multilateralism, dictating terms on peoples across the world. Trump doesn't see people living in other parts of the world have the same right to exercise the same kind of logic of protecting themselves from any kind of infiltration, atrocities, intruding into their economies and like that. And Trump has created such a logic wherein the existence of the international system has been made a very difficult task for many countries. I'm sure that many of you know that he's not alone in the business of things. He has a project of 2025 generated by which foundation? There's a foundation which produced this project 2025 for Heritage Foundation. The Heritage Foundation's 2025 project, if you read it, it's about 900 or plus pages report, wherein go by chapter. In the first 2 months of time, Trump has almost adhered to the demands of this project, nearly 60%, according to the Times and also the Washington Post, nearly 60% of the proposals from this project 2025, in 2 months' time, he did. And this is going to be a very dangerous project, Project 2025 for the world. You know, he doesn't accept that there is a climate crisis. He doesn't accept that there is an ecological crisis. He is against any greening project of this world. I'm sure that, you know, I can go on talking on these issues any forum, in any number of occasions, in any length of time, but there is no end in sight for this. The best answer for the crisis of our existence today is, I'm sure that is Schumacher College. I was literally thrilled by your speech yesterday. No young intellectual of this particular age has the capacity and the courage to tell this world that you use your hands all the time instead of the left side of the brain with the 2 fingers all the time. I'm also an addict somehow. I'm also trying to escape from that. I cannot tell my next generation that you have to get escaped from this trap. And this trap, I am sure that is going to be a very critical challenge for this. I am sure that the days ahead are not quite comfortable for us. There is going to be a very uncomfortable nuclear arms race in the Middle East in the coming days. Many countries are in the business of things. So the world will be more and more unsafe. So I'm sure that there is a case for Schumacher College starting a program on peace and conflict studies. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Seethi. And we have some time for questions. We have, so maybe you sit down there, both of you. Are there any questions? Yes, please.
Professor Seethi, you have presented here very thought-provoking ideas in the present scenario. Hearty congratulations for your thought-provoking presentation. No, I am asking you, Seethi. Will you please think about, as we know that soon after the second term of Trump, there was a lot more against the expatriates and the other people from other countries, especially in the Harvard University campus. And soon after that, the federal court intervened clearly. What about your views regarding the taxation recently imposed against India? Taxation, 50% taxation imposed recently against India.
Thank you. This is actually a question which I mentioned. If you say that United States has a very right to impose tax on any country in the world for its dealings with any particular region or any particular country in the world, I would say that every other country has the same logic of existence. Instead of drawing before or kind of sprawling before Trump all the time, I think the European Union did for some time when such an imposition came. And China was bold enough to say, this will do it. We have our own ways of countering it. And that's why they are more amenable to China now. The American markets are flooded with the Chinese goods, and I personally saw it's the same kind of things. They cannot produce it in a day or two. There should be some kind of a logic in terms of exercising options, in terms of an alternative. If a particular country doesn't export items which they can produce, they have to find alternatives, and certain things you cannot expect from other countries. We'll have to have an option from there. I am sure that this 50% tariff will be a bargaining chip. He will slowly reduce the content. There is a transaction, there is a trade negotiation getting underway with India, and Modi has already made a very positive signals to Trump, saying that we will be prepared to import gas from the United States to circumvent whatever little that we do with, not little, substantially will from China, Russia. So this could be a kind of hard bargaining which people may not be knowing all the time. Academics may not be knowing all the time what is happening within the inner circles of trade negotiations. You do something, you put it as a bargaining point, then you give it time, then after that you have additional incentives, then reduction of tariffs based on your acceptance of this. They have done it with many other countries, forcing them to buy weapons. And in India, I am sure that India is also going to buy a substantial quantity of weapons from the United States as a quid pro quo for reducing the tariffs and like that. This 50% tariffs in the long run will be suicidal for the United States, not for India. India has other options. I am sure that India has very good options which they are going to do if Trump is not available.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the first speaker?
I have a question to Mona, that as a student of education, so I am impressed with your presentation, especially the pedagogic practices in Schumacher college. This practice is actually experiential or activity based and so on. So what is the practice of assessment in your institution? See, these are all maybe teaching learning process. How will you assess your students in this paradigm? Because you have mentioned metacognition. It is about thinking. How will you measure all these processes?
Thank you. It's a very good question. Well, up until recently, our programs, higher education programs, were accredited by the University of Plymouth, which is a mainstream university. So we also had to follow their rules, and that's why I said we were free from that. Having said that, University of Plymouth was very sympathetic with Schumacher College, and they gave us as much freedom as possible within the framework of higher education in the UK. And we used that, we really pushed the boundaries. And so our assessments, our assignments were always mostly included reflective essay, reflective commentary. Most of the assessments, especially on my program, Ecological Design and Thinking, were project-based. We encourage a student to work together and write a report, which is not necessarily an essay. We also encourage them to use multimedia, use visual arts. We gave the freedom as much as we could. But going forward, we will change our assessment criteria because we still have to use marks, which I think is completely outdated. But in this new chapter, we are now working with 3 other institutes which are very similar with us in our value. And we are hoping to create our own accreditation criteria. That will need a proper research. But again, we want to bring head and heart much stronger, the balance between them much stronger in our assessment and assessment criteria.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Thank you for your talks very much. And I'd like to ask Mona whether or not you've considered starting a Schumacher College in India.
I think our Indian alumni should start a Schumacher College in India. I think Schumacher College emerged from the land rather than being exported from the UK. If there's a decision, and we do have amazing alumni in India, they're very, very active. They're active in regenerative project, and I really hope they come together and decide to start a center like Schumacher College, and we support them strongly.
Wouldn't it be a good opportunity maybe to do something in conjunction with this wonderful university that has received us all so beautifully and clearly are committed towards sustainability and all the wonderful qualities that Schumacher is promoting?
Absolutely. We really hope we can partner in some way, and maybe some of our students could come here to do placements and create this network of holistic educations around the world.
The central government is very positive on this issue. Foreign universities coming to this country, but not many are willing because they know the short-term and long-term implications of several things, including bureaucratic bottlenecks and things like that. Otherwise, the government is open on this issue. Kerala government has already initiated a process of inviting private universities or private institutions coming to Kerala. So this is a good question, I think. I'm very positive on it.
Thank you. Ines.
Just a short question to both of you actually. And surely there could be a Schumacher College in India, and I look forward to that. My question is centered around the question of peace and disarmament, but it's addressed to both of you. So we can change the scale from talking about conflict between nations to the culture of violence in our heads, in our everyday lives. So I would love to hear both of your take on cultural disarmament, as it has become very necessary as we see violence being promoted, perpetuated through video games and TV shows and series. And I know that Schumacher College embodies a culture of tolerance and compassion based on Buddhist economics. So how would that connect? Do we not need cultural disarmament in that regard? Thank you.
In fact, I was planning to mention about it in my... back, I had a consultation with the Union Hall Industries annual report. And it gives us feeling that this is a country in every 12 hours there is a community law. Every 12 hours. The statistics says that, there is an average between 600 to 700 community conflicts taking place in this country. Some of them are known, some of them are not recorded, some of them are not published. That explains the reason why that we need such a kind of enterprise. I think we have the challenge is that voices of opposition. Whenever we say opposition, doesn't mean that you are against your country, against your national interests like that. If you don't have any criticism, any kind of introspection, soul searching, your country will not progress in any meaningful way. Your academia, your institutions will go to dormant. So we have a responsibility. I think I'm sure that in many places, Kerala is quite comfortable till this day. I don't know what will happen to Kerala in another 10 years' time. But if you go to North India and in many places, you cannot talk about certain subjects openly. Your identity is crucially important. whether it is Dalit identity or Christian identity or Muslim identity, these are all matters to be negotiated in a very, very uncomfortable way. That demands, we have a very strong constitution. We have a very strong tradition of constitutional morality. But we are living in a period when even our trust in judiciary is under suspect. The retired judges, the retired police officers, they all talk about other things other than what they put on their judgments in black and white. And I'm not mentioning anyone point blank, but we all know, if you don't have trust in your judiciary, if you don't have trust in your institutions, definitely this trust deficit will ultimately result in a deficit of everything, including your democratic deficit will appear in a very uncomfortable way. So the best strategy is to have, as he rightly pointed out, a good campaign for cultural disarmament with Professor Dr. Satish Kumar and his entire team traveling across this country telling this message. I'm sure that you will get your next visa from the Government of India for travel and facilitation. And this is a kind of blockage that we visualize foreign travelers should not be allowed if we speak ill of India. They're not speaking ill of India, they're speaking good things about India. How to live in peace. So two hands are very important. I am sure that I've been telling many people since last speech of you that what is that your hands are not strong enough. Only what you call as your fingers all the time, not hands. The right side of the brain. That should be. The right side of the brain should be empowered. You're not empowering people, empowering them. First empowerment should be on the right side of your brain.
Very well said, and the only thing I can add is that what I mentioned in the presentation, just practice listening, dialogue, critical thinking, and love each other.
Right. Thank you very much. It's time for lunch.
I kindly